What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Peacemaker back with another video. In this video here, I will be going over the update that I did to my Faith Tracer build, which I'm not sure if you've seen the original video, but what I will do, I will go over some key details into the changes, and I'll also explain why I did those changes. So let's get right into it. Let's start with the basics. So the first perk of the Garuda is called Deadeye, which it says weapon damage is increased based on how far you are from the target, capped at 80%. Piercing weapons deal 20% more damage when your whole health is 40% or lower. It increases armor by 1,000, and trimming no longer costs stamina for 10 seconds. Now, with that in mind, I actually got away from the revolver perk. The Garuda, in my mind, well, I don't say my opinion, it's classified as a sharpshooter. And really, with a revolver on the front of the ship, a lot of players have turned this ship into, I guess you could say, like a selling machine gun. Because 9 times out of 10, you do see players run long guns on all sides. So it really kind of takes away from that sharpshooter effect of it. So I stayed away from the revolver perk. So I really just focused on the Deadeye perk with the minor changes that I made to my Faith Tracer build. Now, the main thing I want you to, well, I don't want you. The main thing you need to keep in mind with the Deadeye perk, it says the weapon damage is increased based on how far you are from the target. With the way I have this ship set up, that applies to all my weapons. And also the piercing deals 20% more damage. That also applies to all my weapons as well. So let's go and get right into it. Now, I'm not going to go too far in detail like I did in my original video. Feel free to go check that out. Just pretty much an update, so I'm just going to kind of sum this up. I really wanted to focus on the changes I made. But for the armor, I'm running the Leviathan, and the armor rating on it is 1,150. And we have pretty good status effect resistance. The most we have is 35% of piercing resistance. Now, the main perk of the Leviathan, well, not the main perk, the first perk of the Leviathan is Hydromaniac, which it says every knot of sail speed increases armor by 1%. The second perk of the Leviathan is Impenetrable, which is going to reduce weak point damage by 20%. Now, let's get right into the furniture before I get to the details of what I did with the weapons. Which is, it's not really major changes, but it has made a huge difference in PvP. So from our furniture slot 1, originally, I believe in my first video with Faith Tracer, I was running the war drums, and the war drums is gonna, what does it say? While trimming reduces crew stamina depletion by 50%, and it's gonna increase your armor rating by 200%. Now, the reason I ran this for my major the first time, because of the torpedoes that I run that came through the smuggler pass, reduces your armor by 200. So in case I came across another player who was using those, that 200 will balance itself out and keep me at 1,150. But I've had to change the heart, especially getting away from that revolver perk. And I changed the war drums to the spike station, and it says the spike station, it says hitting a weak point has a 25% chance of reducing all repair effects on target by 75% for 15 seconds regardless of its source. It's also going to increase damage to weak points by auxiliary weapons by 10%. It's also going to reduce the reload time of auxiliary weapons by 7%. Now, from our furniture slot 2, that stayed the same. Tuning station 1, which is going to increase secondary damage of torpedoes by 17%. It's also going to increase projectile speed of torpedoes by 10%, and it restores 5% cruise stamina per second while out of combat. Now, furniture slot 3 also remain the same, which is the high velocity kegs, which is going to increase secondary damage of piercing weapons by 15%, and increase maximum range of piercing weapons by 8%. Now, before I go into furniture slot 4, how can I say this? High velocity kegs is the way to go, at least for my playing style. Because the high velocity kegs with the Garuda specializing in piercing damage anyway, it doesn't matter what weapon I have on my ship. This furniture here applies to all of those, so it don't matter if it's the bombards, my thermites. This furniture here covers all of those. So instead of me having to specifically assign secondary damage to a particular weapon, this furniture here covers all those piercing weapons. So let's get right into furniture slot 4. So for furniture slot 4, I believe previously I had the Lamari 1, which is going to increase crew stamina recovery by 13%. It's also going to increase maximum stamina by 5%. But the main thing I was really going for was the increased torn sail charge by 3%. I've changed that to the front powder kegs 1, which is going to increase front weapon damage by 10%. Now, the other option you could do is totally optional. You could run emergency sails to get the, well, let me read what the emergency sails does. The emergency sails increase trim speed by 10% while pursuing an enemy ship within 400 meters. It's also going to increase charge rate of torn sail status effect by 10% while pursuing an enemy within 400 meters. So you get a increased amount of sail charge, torn sail charge when you're chasing, but you lose that 10% if your opponent's behind you. That's why I stuck with the Lamari 1 the first time, because I'd rather keep that 3% on the front and the back of my, just the front and the stern of my ship. In addition to the emergency sails, by you increasing your trimming speed, since the Leviathan has the Hydromaniac perk to it, which is going to increase your armor by 1% for every sail knot, the Garuda caps out at like 16 knots. I actually tested this out and it topped out with me chasing somebody at like 17 knots. But if you combine that with a water barrel, you actually almost match a brigantine or a brig in speed, which is also going to increase your armor in total. Let's say if you get up to 20 knots, that's an additional 20% to your armor. That is another option that you could run for your furniture slot 4 if that's your playstyle. But I went with the front powder kegs 1. Now furniture slot, what in the world? Furniture slot 5 remained the same as well, which is the organ harvesting station, which is also going to increase rocket damage by 5% for every 20% of hull health missing on player's ship. In addition to that, it's also going to increase secondary damage of rockets by 10%, and it's also going to reduce the reload time of rockets by 5%. And as you all know, furniture slot 6, maintenance forge 1. I want to get away from this, but I don't want to say I can't, because I do want to increase my DPS, but that furniture slot there is highly overlooked in my opinion. But before I get into the weapons, let me explain the blending of this furniture setup. So with the spike station, I'm already getting a boosted reload of my auxiliary by 7%. You combine that with the organ harvesting station, which is also going to reduce my reload time by an additional 5%. So that's a 12% boosted reload towards my auxiliary. Not only that, my auxiliary is going to do more damage the more health that I lose. In addition to that, I'm also going to increase, I'm already getting the secondary damage of rockets by 10%. I'm already getting an increased weak point damage by auxiliary by 10% as well. So I'm boosting my reload. I'm getting the secondary damage of the rockets from the organ harvesting station. I'm getting a 10% damage increase with the spike station. And I'm also having a chance to reduce your repair amount. Now to top that off, with the high velocity kegs, which is going to add an additional 15% secondary damage from any weapon that I have on my ship. There's a lot of damage piling up in my mind. Now I've tried this in PvP and it works well. But let's get right into the changes I did with the weapons. Not really too many changes there, but I do want to go over some key details that I kept in mind. Now again, nothing against the revolver perk. It is nice, but the whole the sailing machine gun thing that's going on right now, it's gotten old. And you can see here on your screen, almost in the bottom right, the Garuda is classified as a sharpshooter, and I want to stay. I needed to stay true to that. So originally, I was running these Skurlock Lone 9s, since they do that level 3 piercing. Plus, I can get that 7,000 extra damage once I tear my opponent's sail. And with the Lamari 1, with that 3%, it sped up that process. Now, if you run the emergency sails, that will speed up that process even more. Especially since it has the mass breaker, piercing level 3, and tearing level 2, which increases damage by 50% when hitting sails. But that has changed to the Band of 10 Suns. Now, my perspective on this was I needed something to change the playing field since the Garuda has pretty much taken over Season 4. Now, with the Band of 10 Suns, the first perk is Unrelenting Drill, which fires a drill bolt that travels in a straight path. Keep that in mind, a straight path, piercing multiple targets. Bolt deals an additional 50% to sequential targets after hitting the first, meaning if you hit your first target for 3,000, let's just say make it even 2,000. I won't say 2,000, let's say 4,000. The next target that's behind it is going to get hit for like 2,000, so it's going to half it up. Now, the other perk of the Band of 10 Suns is Lone Draw, which is this weapon can be charged up to 420% increased damage and 900-meter increased range. Now, the Band of 10 Suns also does level 3 piercing, like the Skurlock Lone 9s, and that level 3 piercing is going to add 30% of damage as piercing damage, in addition to the base 20% increase that the Garuda already has from the Deadeye perk. Now, with that piercing level 3, it's also going to increase the damage to weak points by 100%. Now, here's the other thing I noticed from swapping from the lone gun to the ballista. If you scroll down to the bottom, under here where it says damage summary, it says damage per shot is 985. That's without a full charge. And our piercing is at 339. But if you look at the secondary weapon stats, it says weapon weak point damage is 250%. Charge time is 1 second, 1.60, which is really a second and a half. And the projectile speed is 1,080 meters. So with that in mind, let's go down to, let's say, Divine Thunder, which I know a lot of people run. Now Divine Thunder does level 2 piercing, which is nice. Plus you getting that status effect of the electricity, and plus you also have that chance of that devastating lightning strike, which is a lot of damage, don't get me wrong. But here's where the downfall comes in that I noticed. If you look under, not the damage summary, because our damage does go up, as well as the electric and our piercing, but I really wasn't too concerned about that. Under secondary weapon stats, our weak point damage goes down 25% compared to the 250 that we're getting with the Band of 10 Suns. Also, the projectile speed of the Divine Thunder is 350 meters compared to the 1080 meters that the Band of 10 Suns is going to give you, which is going to put you at a huge advantage distance wise. So I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll swap to this. So with that projectile speed of 350 meters per second, I noticed at long distances, if you're not really used to it, the long gun has a tendency to curve. So I'm gonna just take a couple shots. Actually, let me go back. I want to do something where y'all can actually see what you can actually visually see what I'm talking about. So let's swap that back out for the famous B.K.W.R. Be easy to keep track of it that way. Come on now. Alright, so we have 350 meters projectile speed with the B.K.W.R. So I'm gonna shoot towards the clouds, and you'll notice, I'm not sure if you can see that, like they go straight for like maybe 300 meters, maybe 4. Oops, wrong button. Please don't, please don't. Okay, we bailed on that one. So I'm not sure if you can actually see it, but the bullets will start off straight and they'll start to arc. And I wanted to eliminate that and put me at an advantage with the ballista. Now you could also run the twin witch ballista, which is going to give you more range, but I noticed when I tried the twin witch ballista, it had that same effect as the long gun. It will start straight at a longer distance, but eventually it will start to arc. And if I come down here to where it says secondary weapon stats, we also lose 25% on weak spot damage. The charge time goes up to 2 seconds, but the projectile speed drops to 900 meters. So with the Band of 10 Suns, it's a guaranteed straight line. Not to mention, if there's something in the way, this weapon here does not care what it shoots, it will go through it. That is including another player. So let's say if you're farming the event to get the ice shards, to get the scars, and you know how like a lot of players, they'll bunch up around the ship that they're trying to get the stuff from, and you just want to get that shot in before the event ends. This here will go through that player and hit that ship. That also includes the Blight Keeper as well as the B.K.W.R shield. This here will go through all of it. So let's do a shot test with this. It's really hard to beat that 180 meter projectile speed, especially in a straight line. So if my target's at a longer distance, I'm more guaranteed to hit them versus those 6 shots that it can shoot with the long guns. So shoot towards the sky, straight line. That is really hard to beat, man. Not to mention I'm also getting that weak spot damage as well. So let's get back into the weapons. I just want to give you that little demonstration. Now for my port, I'm still running the... I do not know how to pronounce that name. But this weapon here does level 2 piercing. And with the 20% boost that we're getting from the Deadeye, not to mention the increased damage the further the target is away, this here is going to, like, it's going to take chunks out of a player's health, even if they brace. And not only that, it's also going to reduce their armor by 200 for 10 seconds. So keep that in mind as well. Now for my stern, I went with the Moon Megs 3. And this is the only B.K.W.R that does piercing damage. Even though it only does piercing level 1, the Garuda specializes in piercing, so I want to keep it true to piercing. And plus I'm getting a boost from the high velocity kegs with the secondary damage of 15%. So that's an added bonus to that piercing level 1, so it's not as bad as you think. And plus if someone's chasing you, with the B.K.W.Rs you have a radius versus using a long gun. And if you miss your shots, the B.K.W.R with the area of effect, you still have a chance to get some decent damage off at 4,428. Now my auxiliary, I'm running the Thermites 3. And these here do piercing level 1 as well. And the high velocity kegs, as I stated before with the furniture, that covers all the weapons that do piercing damage. So I get an added bonus to all my weapons secondary wise. Plus I'm getting the 10% increase with the spike station. I'm also getting an increase in damage from the organ harvesting station. And plus I'm getting the secondary damage on top of the high velocity kegs with, well, yeah, on top of the high velocity kegs with the organ harvesting station, I'm also getting an additional, I think it was like 10% secondary damage from rockets. So you got a lot of damage piling up on your target. Not to mention while you're selling, your armor's increased. Like, man, it's a really hard build from what I've experienced to beat. Now I do have some gameplay. I didn't include some gameplay in my first original video, but I will include some gameplay with this one. Hopefully you all enjoy the information, and I will see y'all in the next one. Thank you for your time, thank you for your energy, and I will see y'all in the next one. Take it easy.